Hey guys, this will be video 5 for the how to design build a custom 50s era Explorer replica. And I'm going to primarily be focusing on moving from paper to templates for the neck. And we're going to talk about just neck construction in general. Well, not neck construction, but preparing to machine your neck, and whether you're going to be doing like a bolt-on Leo fender type application, or you're going to do a tenon, mortise and tenon per Gibson. And keep in mind, this really blows a lot of people's mind. Uh, you could do a dovetail, and that really, and I'm gonna spend about 3 seconds talking about this. But if you were in a situation where you just didn't have enough wood, but you knew this wood was unbelievably beautiful, uh, once that fretboard goes over that and it's in the body, my theory is in order to get this tenon in there, you have to remove wood from the body. So it's counterproductive in a sense, because you'd be shocked how little of a tenon you really need in order to hold the guitar in. Because Gretsch, all of their early, and I promised I wouldn't spend much time talking about this, but all of the early Gretsch duo jets, the Penguins, stuff like that, they're dovetail. The guitar that I restored and I've covered in some of the last videos, it was a dovetail join, and the tonal aspects were phenomenal. Even the bridge, I'm sorry, the fretboard cantilevered after about the 17th fret. It was floating, and the guitar still had phenomenal tone. So if you got in a situation where you had a beautiful neck and you just had to, how short could you go if you were doing just a mortise and tenon? About an inch, but man, you're really cutting it. If you did that, you would want to come in and pin it from the sides with some dowels. Okay, I'm gonna stop. But just know that, excuse me, just know and understand you don't have to do this. Or let's say you had this, but you really wanted it to be this configuration right here. Well, simply cut a 1 3/4 inch wide. What? Sorry, 1 1/2 inch wide. Let's say you wanted your tenon to be 1 1/2 inch wide. Well, pull your table saw out. Take a piece of maple that is 2 1/4 inches wide. Put it on your table saw and cut a little tenon, and then epoxy glue that tenon to that, or use your white glue, your carpenter's glue, tight bind, and glue that on there, and then shape it into whatever you want. Okay, I did that on the I think Flying V number 6. Did that exact configuration, and it sounded incredible. So anyway, there's a lot of different ways to build a neck, and what we're going to do is talk about how we transition from paper to plywood. And then I've got some acrylic. I've already started machining the acrylic headstock profile, and I almost went ahead and finished it. I thought, nope, this is an excellent time to do a video and talk about where I'm at, what I'm thinking, and how I'm progressing to build the job. So let's say you're just building your single guitar for yourself. Let me check the time. Yeah, that's a record 3 minutes 46 second introduction. Usually I'm 6 or 7 minutes. Okay, so you were able to take your X-Acto knife and really do a very precise cutout. I don't like scissors, because scissors sometimes the light will reflect in the scissor and you'll get off. It'll throw you, and then you might end up with a really good positive 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 space template, and but lose your negative space template. Like that right there, I would consider that negative space very rough for the upper wing and the upper bout of the Explorer. Okay, that would be the negative space template. It's kind of like, think about if you've ever seen guys building hollow body jazz guitars. When we build our rim sets, we have a negative space template that you see the guitar in there, but it's like a swimming pool, and then you build the rims, the blocking, all the heel block, the butt block, and all that jazz. You build this whole rim section, and then you glue the back and the top on. So the same thing applies in this situation right here. Uh, and to kind of put my money where my mouth is, let me see if I can just throw this up on the table just briefly. You might be surprised that if you're building a custom guitar and you're really processing through what you think might look good or might not look good, as long as you do a really good job doing your cutout, your negative space template with some green or red or orange or whatever your favorite color is, backing will fill in the negative space and really pop. And you can look at that thing and say, oh no, it's too long, it's too left, it's too right, it's too this. But if you just scissored that out, then you would lose your negative space template. And, it might cause you to, miss the mark. So let's talk about this briefly. My and the decision, but in case I forget, let's talk about this first. I was going to take this, which is much more petite and it's authentic 58, and I was going to put it on this piece of plywood. Okay, just going to put it on this piece of plywood in that location right there, and then I got to thinking. I was like, well, what would be easier to take material away or to add material? So my theory is this, as I had mentioned in the last video, it's very unlikely that I'll be building this guitar again because I much prefer building my own custom guitars and not encroaching on the design aspects of guitars that already are out there. And I've already talked about how I engineer certain things into my jobs, like the double adjustable truss rod, so that if I do a replica, there's no way that anyone could ever be taken advantage of with one of my guitars because they'd pull off this truss rod cover and realize, oh yeah, it's not a 58, it's not even a 70, it's got a double adjustable truss rod in there from the late 2000s because of the design of that rod. So anyway, engineer little things like that into your job, especially if you are really, really good at building replicas, so much so that they look like they're authentic. But my theory was I went with my larger profile so that I can at least have that for my guitars. But then you'll see in a little while, I'll cover this, but in a little while, we're going to go through the operations of how you rough out the authentic one from the plans, from the PDF. And this is spot on all day long. Okay. So, got some general intro information out of there, and I probably got my 7-minute intro. Yep, I'm almost 8 minutes, so I'm still doing intro. But nonetheless, I'm about to take my jigsaw this out, and then that will be my template for my guitars. And then I will make the decision of whether I'd go ahead and do the tenon. I've already kind of have the answer for this. Am I going to take this piece of plywood and go ahead and cut the tenon? My answer is no. Even though for this guitar that I'm building, yes, I will do that. But I want this headstock template, this neck template right here, to be so universal that I can lay at the top a piece of really nice bird's eye maple and lay it down and machine the outer perimeter with my router, onto a piece of nice maple for your typical, rock and roll guitar. Okay. And then I will be doing a tenon on the Explorer, but I'll do that just freehanded on my table saw. And there was one guy who commented a couple weeks back who was kind of curious about seeing that, and I apologize I haven't gotten that video up yet, but within a few days or so I'll try to do that video and show you how I cut a tenon. And you might be able to see the faint pencil line there. See, that's the 16th fret location. And I went ahead and drew a typical 1 1/2 inch tenon. There's a tenon line right there, tenon line right there, and then obviously it's 3 3/4 of an inch off the center. And this fret scale is 24 3/4, so you'd have to be careful or you just have to be aware of what it was you drew on here, so that if you build a Fender product or replica, you can't trust that 16th fret location, because this is a 24 3/4. That guitar is typically 25 and a half. Okay, so just and I didn't write on here exactly what this scale is, but I'm so comfortable grabbing up a template and looking at it and verifying things like that, that I'm not going to screw that up. So the next step would be, as I mentioned, rather than wasting my plywood with just cutting out this petite profile, I cut out the big one, and then even if I used this to rough out machine a traditional neck, well, then I simply use my other piece of acrylic, and then I do some masking tape up there, and I jet glue that Explorer profile template onto that headstock right there, tilt it down real low, and then just route around it. And if that makes sense, and then that should make sense, because I've got my nut location and all that jazz based on that right there. So let me check the time, and I think I kind of did a shotgun blast of what I was planning on getting fairly detailed about. So I think that's going to be probably enough information talking about that, because I would do it a grave injustice if I tried to start getting really detailed, because the detail that I would be discussing would only apply to one particular guitar. So just know, and you may, I say may, it's very unlikely that you're going to build the identical guitar that I'm building. But because the nut location for you might be Floyd Rose, it might be 1 3/4, it might be an R3, it might be an R4, it might be an R2, it might be the 1 11/16, or it might be 1 19/32. Sky's the limit. And everything about what you do at the nut location. This is so important. Pay attention to this, if you will. What you do at the nut location is going to affect the trapezoidal path, PATH, by which your uh, neck template needs to follow. So don't think that you could machine this template 1 3/4 at the nut with a Floyd Rose, and then 2 3/16 down at the 19th. I'm just grabbing a number out of there. That's what I usually do. But then build this guitar with a 1 5/8 nut and expect to use that template right there. You're going to need to machine another uh, pattern that would be based on the trapezoidal path that you'll be doing. If that makes sense, it should make perfect sense. This is the nut location, right here, and I've got a little extra there in case I decided to go with a Floyd Rose on one of my guitars. I always do that. But based on this one right here, that's 1 11/16. Sorry, got my thumb in the way. That's 1 11/16 nut, and then it's 2 3/16 at the 19th. Okay, so that trapezoidal path is kind of universal. That's close enough that if I made it a little bit wider, or actually a little bit more narrow, I'd be okay. But don't plan on doing extreme jumping, in your dimensional path. And I shouldn't have brought that up, because as I just mentioned, if I'm not careful, I'll get too technical, and it'll just be a waste of time, or it'll just be confusing for the guys that are kind of the beginner type builders. And speaking of the beginner type builders, I know a lot of us might be tempted to, and with good reason, because building a neck is it's a pretty advanced process. So the question would be, do I go online and buy one of these little $60 necks, and I'll go straight to the finish line? And I'd say absolutely not. Don't do it. Don't do it. Don't do it, because it's such a hit or miss situation. I paid for this one. The lady was in California. She was really sweet. I asked her a lot of questions, and she came back and answered everything. And I explained to her, I said, this is important. That's important. These three things are important. What is this width right here? What is this width right here? And can you guarantee me what is the distance from here to here? And everything that she gave me was inaccurate. This thing is 1/8 of an inch more narrow than what she told me it was. This is absolutely unusable on anything other than like a child's guitar where you did some sort of weird little configuration. Everything about this neck is so effed up. It's silly. As soon as I pulled it out of the box, visually I saw that location right there was a good 3/32 of an inch further in. And what spooked me was I saw another guy online getting unloading a neck like this, and he was like, "Just make sure that when you buy this neck, that you're going to have to reposition this drill location right here." So my question is that kind of crap engineered into these necks just to piss everybody off? Okay, I went straight to the finish line there. I'm so sick of seeing that. But everything about the stuff that's online that's really cheap, it looks like a good deal. It might be maple and it might be this, it might be that, it might be a good looking wood, but then you get it in your shop and you realize it's a piece of you know what. Or you're not qualified enough as a builder to assess what it is that you got, what you thought was a smoking deal, and then you went ahead and built your guitar and it's completely unusable. Because not only that, the dimensions are one thing. There's ways around that. Because see, I could come in and I could glue some additional wood out here to kind of widen it up a little bit if the fret platform was there. But this fretboard goes down, and then all of a sudden it drops down, and then it goes out, and then it comes back up. And everything about it was it didn't warp. It was machined that way. So you can't tell me. Anyway, I'll stop. So just run. But if you can't build a neck, one thing that would be extremely wise is if you're watching like your online auction type platforms, if you see a music craft or an old Kramer or like an old Yamaha or obviously any of the Fender necks pop up, they sell for between $200 to $500. You can't justify, unless you really know what you're doing, buying all of this wood right here and building it yourself and getting it right, as compared to just buying that neck online, for 200 or 300 bucks, and then come in and machine like your bolt-on profile, okay? Or do what I said in. I already did this video earlier and I erased it. I got way too long-winded, and I may have mentioned it at the beginning of this video, but and I think I did. You could build this up with a tenon. So if you were just really set on building the vintage 58 specs a guitar with the mortise and tenon type situation, and once you glued that block on the bottom right there, then once it's glued in place and you know that it's perfectly centered, then you could come in with your router and start relieving that maple down there, and even take your pull saw and cut that profile, chisel it out. There's so many ways to cowboy your way to the finish line. So don't be afraid, especially if you see an old Kramer neck pop up for 200 bucks. Oh wow, jump on that, unless I beat you to it, because I typically buy those when they pop up. Those are pretty rare necks. Anything like ESP, those are great necks. But be careful with that product right there, unless you just want to use it as I'm using it now, just to use as demonstration purposes, or mock up. I could take a piece of plywood, like the body that I have there, and now I could just you know, clamp it on with a couple of small quick grip clamps and hang it on the wall and ask myself, do I like what I see? Okay, or will it fit in the case and things like that. Okay, let me check the time. Let me pause. I'm going to regroup, and then we're going to go into the discussion about the machining the acrylic headstock profile for the authentic 58 Explorer. Okay, that's amazing. I didn't realize you could pause the camera that long. I paused it for about 15 minutes. I went ahead and just roughed that out very quickly. Used the table saw first, did that run. This is not finished. It's just rough out. You can still see the pencil line. Left myself about a 1/16 of an inch on the outside of the real thick pencil line, which actually, once this is machined on the router, will be gone. Okay, so that'll show you just how quickly you can get your template under control. And what's amazing, where's my jigsaw? Let me show you something briefly about this jigsaw. I love this jigsaw. This is a DeWalt DW331, and unfortunately, I'm not sponsored by DeWalt, but I should be because I've used their tools since I was about 18 years old. That's the design. Make sure, yeah, I'm unplugged. But this is the blade I use. This is a Bosch T144D, and it's big. It's really aggressive, but it's razor sharp. And you simply insert that into position and just make sure it's locked, and you're good to go. Now, this has a little fan control, which you can turn the fan on, which will blow the dust away, which is pretty incredible. It's variable speed, and you can also adjust this so that the blade will give a little bit and cut on a bit of a pitch, or you can stand the blade up real straight up and down. So it's a great little jigsaw, and I think they're about $200, give or take. But that Bosch blade, this is the back side. Okay, that's worth $200 alone, especially if that was a piece of bird's eye maple or mahogany or something like that that you were really concerned about. Now, that was done on the oscillating sander. I did take the oscillating sander and clean up the corners a little bit, but for the most part, that's exactly what it looked like. Even though that was done on the table saw by hand, that's about how it looked. Okay, so let's talk about the acrylic template for the actual uh, Explorer. I'm extremely frugal. Everything I do, I'm always real cautious and conscientious about what my material use. Basically, this was cut rough down here, and I was able to get my whole Explorer headstock out of that bottom right there. But you might see something. I hope these. Let me slow down. Just pick up on all the pencil lines that are traveling over into the negative space template or the drop. See that line right there? Let me just go ahead and point out what these are. This continuing line right here is the center line of all of the tuners. This continuing line right here is where they glued an ear atop the neck in order to conceal the end grain. I'm not going to say I agree with that 100%, or if it really was just probably because what it was, their neck boards were like 2 1/4, and that just happens to be where the 2 1/4 ended. See my point? It allowed them to be much more efficient with their use of material by doing a very short little neck and then gluing up all these ears. It's brilliant. That's brilliant woodworking, and just as strong and just as good tonal aspects. So this is kind of getting heavy. But nonetheless, there's a pencil line right there, which shows that's the continuation of the neck, and then there's a little ear glued on right there. Okay, and then all of these vertical lines up here were just based on that came from this tracing right here. Okay, as I had this laid up here, I just continued all of these lines so that once I got to this point right here, I would always have a reference of where the nut location was or where the first tuner was in relation to this drawing. And I'm not out here trying to transfer because I didn't take the time to pencil those in. So I'm going to get this off the table. Get a drink of water real fast. Okay, the next move. Let me see if I can find a little blade. This is pretty important if I can find a little blade. If you use that DW311, this is the Bosch. This came in the Bosch blade set. T119B as in boy, and then O as in operation. Yeah, I should have just shown this right here. I got this about I'm not kidding. 12 years ago, still using them. I've burned up one, but I believe from like Home Depot. So these are incredible blades, and I love that quick change design. I don't know what it's called. It's called the T-shank. The T-shank design. I love that design. So that little thing right there, it's almost like a little coping saw blade. T119BO produced. There's no trickery here. Nothing has been done here, but that was the back side of the cutout. So you can see, and that's 3/8 inch acrylic. Uh, Obviously, I came in right here, came up and stopped, entered in from over here, took off that bottom down here, and that's how clean it was on the drop, as well as I'm not going to show it. I might show it in a minute, but it's just as clean. I don't have to prove that to you. I don't have anything to prove to anybody. But nonetheless, it's just as clean on that right there. So the next step is after you rough that out, then take it over to your oscillating sander. And if you guys don't know what an oscillating sander is, it's a round metal, it's a little bench, and this goes up and down as it's turning clockwise viewed from the top. As it's turning, it's also traveling up and down. And I think it travels about an inch to an inch and a half, maybe. It's a pretty good amount of travel. And it just keeps it cool. This is critical. I'll take it a second. Other than the safety glasses, this is the most important item in your entire shop. Your sanding belt cleaner. As this is running, you'll reach up here as the machine is running. You'll reach up here and just kind of go across it, and it'll clean that sandpaper, and it'll last so much longer, and it'll cut so much better, and it's cooler. Everything about it is incredible, and it can also be used. Yeah, I'm sorry. Sometimes I'll run like a 3.5 inch hole saw, and as I'm on my drill press using that hole saw, I'll put this up against the hole saw, and it'll ring like a bell as you're cleaning the hole saw, and it'll clean the teeth of even the hole saw. So, all right, so no charge for that. But the next step was I took the oscillating sander and just cleaned it up a little bit, just primarily for presentation for the video. Because it was kind of square here and square here. It kind of had the stealth lines where it was just roughed out. But then the next step was to, not this one because this is my prized pointer, a pick tool, but these little cheap ones that you can get at like your auto parts store. I take a propane torch, and after I have found these points right here, I'll heat that point up, not to the point that it's glowing, but then I'll come in here under a magnifying glass. I'll hit that with the torch. I've got this clamped, and then I'll just kiss that to define those points right there. That one's already been drilled. This one has not been drilled yet. Can't find it, but anyway, it's just barely it's barely got a little indentation in it. Because then I put it up on my drill press, and I align with that bit right there. Okay, get that on my drill press, and as that's aligned, then I reach up and simply just keep in mind it's the drill press is still kind of in place. I'm holding it down, and then I do my final clamp work. I'm sorry, I kiss it, I touch the point, clamp it, then as I'm holding the drill press right there, I go ahead and have the bit down, kissing the acrylic, and then I pull the trigger on the drill press with my left hand because this is clamped to my deck, and then I go ahead and just run through. And then when I come out, I immediately transfer over to one of these two right here. That's a 1/4 inch, okay? And you could use this stepped bit to kiss it a little bit and see where the circle indentation is in relation to your crosshairs. And if you're off, now's the time to correct it. And if you're not off, odds are you should be good. Then go ahead and chuck up your 1/4 inch, and make your pass. Now see the tape right there? I've got a piece of masking tape on that little sacrificial board there, piece of masking tape on the back side here, and then there are two little dots of jet glue, which I call the CA glue, a medium. Go to Hobby Lobby and get the medium. The thick is too thick. I never use the thick, but the thin is way too thin for this, even though it's perfect for other applications. But the medium jet glue, that's probably the second most important item in the shop. Extreme Power Medium CA glue. I think it's $5.99. Yeah, $5.99, and there's an enormous amount there. How many ounces are there? 1 ounce, 28.4 grams. That's a ton of glue. Okay, for $6. Okay, so there you have it. And then go through the opera. In other words, once you make that cut right there with the drill press, you're clamped in place. Then pull that drill bit out and chuck up this drill bit and just pull the trigger. And then you guarantee that you're in the correct location. Okay? Let me check time. 31 minutes. Let me pause, get cleaned up, get organized a little bit, and then I'll finish up the video and just general conversation about, what's the next step. Okay, you should be able to finish the video here. I've already talked about the masking tape and the jet glue. Went ahead and drilled those two locations. Took about 7 minutes, 5 minutes or so. I want to show you if you're, and I'll digress a little bit. If you've got something like this jet glued down, be really careful about breaking it loose because you'll tear it apart. So you might want to come in and at least get this location up and then go with a really thin blade here and just work your way out. But with something that thick right there, you're pretty safe to kind of pull up one end, and then once you get that one end up, rather than trying to just peel it up, you might snap something. Once you get one up, then just go to the side and it'll break loose immediately. So again, these are things that I kind of learned by watching some guys online that build guitars. And I wish I had gotten his name and reference, but that was the first time I had ever seen anybody use jet glue. I'm sorry, I always call it jet glue because there was a model shop where I used to buy my CA glue from, and it was called jet glue. And you can see this little sacrificial template. That's where I cut my Flying V tuners, and I'm gonna have to cut it off because it's getting dangerous. I'm not getting any good backing back there, but it looks like a little machine gun. But if you have something like this, that way it guarantees that you're not just working with this up on the drill press, and you've got a base by which you can come clamp over here or anywhere. Okay. You guys already know this stuff for the most part, or if you don't, you do now. So here we are. What was the most, probably, if there was the single most important thing, and this is bar none critical, and I'll show it. I can show it on this template here. Stuart McDonald template for doing P90s. It's got a score line, yeah, right there. It's so super thin, but let's see if we can get it to show up. See that score line? Now, if you've got it like this, the score line is on top of the template, and you'll get a false reading because wherever your light is in the room, the light will come through and prism through the score, and it will put it'll put a black line down below your template, and it'll throw you off. So you got to always have that score line against your surface. So the reason I bring that up, we run into a bit of a problem since we're building our template from the front, correct? And again, this is probably one of the most single important things you'll ever learn about building your own templates. Is where I'm going with this is transferring the center line of your neck to the back side so you can do the score line on the back side, unless you're building a left-hand guitar. In my case, I scored it on both sides, okay, so that I could do a reverse headstock if I wanted, do a left hand, I could do a right hand, but for for certain, I had to make certain that I transferred that center line here and where it transferred out to the back of my template. And when I printed this off, it did not have the center line drawn. So before I did any of this cutout, I drew my own center line to make certain that I had that. And then how did I do it? Well, once I drew that center line off the template there, in my negative space template, I also had it drawn, but I just carried it down 90 degrees, made a mark right there, went ahead and finished this off perfectly precise square. And then I took the center line down and made a mark there. And then I connected the center of the nut location, or not that that's even finished, but at least the center location there to the center location there with a very fine, I like the aluminum, because if you use be careful using the acrylic, because you'll get ghosting, where you'll think you're on the line, but actually you're looking at the ghosting of the prism or the light coming through the ruler. So just be careful with these. I like the aluminum because it gives you the exact location, and then you score it with your X-Acto knife. And the question would be, is it time to pull this off? And I'll say it's okay to pull it off the back, but I can't pull it off the front because I've got to use the front. And I really should be leaving this on there because it'll slide easier on my oscillating sander. But for demonstration purposes, this will be, let me just do it. You can see where I went ahead and scored the nut location as well. So you can see there's the nut location. Wow, it's tricky. All right, so that ought to tell you what I'm talking about. Now, when I use this template and I lay it atop a board, okay, see those score lines? Now, if I've got a board, I lay it on here. If I always draw my center lines. Now I can come up here and lay this on here, and I could turn this piece of bird's eye maple under here into 58 Explorer. Okay, and I could end the video on that right there. That ought to be some great information for you guys, but just work your way to the finish line. And I bought a 24-inch by 48-inch, I believe it was, piece of 3/8-inch acrylic for $18. This guy was giving this stuff away. Basically was just selling it for shipping. And I like the smoked glass, the smoked, because it actually shows better than the clear. The clear is sometimes it's hard to see those score lines, but with the smoked line, man, you look down and I mean you see a precise black line on your whatever it is you're working on. And there you have it. So we're pretty close. Next step will be going to the oscillating sander with my large 3-inch diameter. Why? Because every bit of this is outside corner. And I verified that this cut up here is a 3-inch diameter. Because you have to keep in mind, this is pretty important. If they're building, hundreds and hundreds of guitars a month, they don't want this cut to be a compound radius cut that someone has to do by hand and keep their eye on. They want to be able to just put it up to the 3-inch diameter drum, or the 2.5-inch diameter drum, which has sandpaper on it. So in all actuality, it's about 3 1/16 of an inch diameter, or it's 2 9/16. And what is this right here? It's 3 1/16 of an inch. Okay, and that's exactly what's drawn right here. So it's pretty cool to see it come together. This is not finished, but it's very close. It'll be finished to the point where it could be used to build a guitar headstock within 30 minutes. Okay, so I'll end the video there. Appreciate you guys dropping in. And the next video, I have no idea what we'll talk about. This was getting kind of long, so I'm just going to stop talking. And again, I appreciate it. And if you got any questions or comments, just let me know. and I'll be happy to do everything I can. One thing I will say this: keep in mind, I've built a lot of guitars, but I don't have all the answers, and sometimes I'll be doing something, and I'm sure somebody out there might be watching me thinking, "Oh wow, he hasn't ever thought about doing this or doing that." So feel free to correct me if you see me doing something that's a little bit archaic. But I like thinking along the lines of, what if a guy only has a table saw and a drill press? And if that be the case, you don't have to have an oscillating sander. You could chuck that up in your drill press and you can get these much larger. And then you raise the drill press table up and then you just work till the cows come home. Okay, so keep that in mind. If you've got a really nice drill press, you got to be proficient with your miter saw, and you got a table saw. You could get away with not having the oscillating sander, but man, do they! It's so much nicer than a drill press when it comes to doing really, like some more heavy duty work. Okay, and then you got to have all your hand tools. So by the time you buy all your tools, you probably could just go buy a custom shop Les Paul and be done with it and plug it in and play. So anyway, let me know if I can help you guys out, and I'll see you in the next video. Thanks.